Every human being who has ever lived, every king, every slave, every builder of pyramids, and every forgotten child has faced the same biological prison. It cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be postponed forever. It is the great equalizer, the one appointment every person keeps, usually several times a day. And yet, for roughly 200,000 years of human existence, there was no modern toilet, no handle to push, no pipe to carry it away, no porcelain throne in a private room with a lock on the door. So where did it all go? How did the great civilizations of stone and marble, of philosophy and empire, handle the one problem nobody could escape? The answer is buried beneath our feet, hidden in archaeological layers, written into the genetic memory of our cities, and stained into the fabric of power itself. Because the history of the toilet is not really about toilets, it is about survival. It is about who gets to live and who gets to die when millions of people decide to live in one place.
The trouble began when we stopped moving. For most of human history, we were nomads, wandering after herds, leaving our waste behind in the grass, letting the rain wash it away, letting time erase the evidence. But then, around 10,000 years ago, something changed. We planted wheat. We built walls. We settled down. And the moment we did, we created a crisis that nature had never intended to solve. In a permanent settlement, waste accumulates. It seeps into the water. It draws flies. It rots in the sun. The larger the city grew, the deadlier it became. Archaeologists digging beneath the oldest cities in Mesopotamia find something disturbing beneath the layers of pottery and bone, thick, compacted layers of refuse and human waste, pressed into the earth like a secret the city was trying to hide. These early urban centers were essentially drowning in themselves, and that is when the first engineers emerged, not the ones who built temples, but the ones who figured out how to make the filth disappear. But here is where the story gets strange. The earliest solutions were not crude holes in the ground. They were sophisticated. At Skara Brae, a stone village on the windswept Orkney Islands, built 5,000 years ago, archaeologists discovered something that made no sense at first. These Neolithic farmers had constructed homes with stone furniture, stone beds, and narrow stone channels running through the floors, drainage systems carved from bedrock, designed to carry waste away from living spaces using gravity and seawater. 5 millennia ago, someone understood that the problem was not just the waste itself, but its proximity to the living. Meanwhile, 4,000 miles away in the Indus Valley, the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were rising with something unprecedented. Brick-lined sewers running beneath the streets, connecting to private bathrooms in upper-story homes. These were not primitive outhouses. They were engineered systems. The people who built them had grasped a terrifying truth. Civilization and sewage are the same project. You cannot have one without solving the other. Yet sanitation was never just about engineering, it was about power. In ancient Egypt, the pharaohs and high officials enjoyed limestone seats with slots carved over jars of sand, while laborers in the workers' village of Deir el-Medina used communal pits that had to be emptied by hand. The distance between your body and your waste became a measure of your distance from power. To be clean, to be separate from the smell and the shame, was to be elite. Privacy, in these early centuries, was a luxury good. The rich had it, the poor lived in it. And as cities grew, this division became a wall higher than stone. The toilet was becoming a symbol of civilization itself, but only for those who could afford to flush and forget. Then came Rome. And everything we think we know about ancient sanitation gets turned inside out. We imagine Romans in togas, reclining in marble halls, but their relationship with waste was communal, intimate, and deeply strange. Walk into a Roman latrina, and you would not find private stalls. You would find a stone bench with holes cut in a row, side by side, sometimes seating 20 or 30 men shoulder to shoulder. There were no partitions, no doors. You sat inches from strangers, senators beside slaves, soldiers beside merchants, conducting your business while discussing politics or the weather. Archaeologists have found the graffiti they left behind, etched into the plaster, jokes, names, complaints about the wine. But here is the real surprise. Beneath these seats ran a constant flow of water, diverted from public baths and fountains, washing the waste into the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer of Rome, and eventually into the Tiber. It was an engineering miracle. A city of 1 million people, moving waste on an industrial scale, using nothing but gravity and slave labor. Yet it was not hygiene as we understand it. The Romans did not know about germs. They prized the ritual of cleanliness, the smell of perfume, the sight of running water. but they had no idea why their water systems kept some diseases at bay, while others, malaria, dysentery, chronic lead poisoning, thrived in the very channels they had built. The system worked until it didn't. When the empire fractured, the aqueducts broke, the water stopped flowing, and the stone benches sat silent. The knowledge of how to move a city's waste did not disappear overnight, but the infrastructure did. And when the infrastructure fails, the waste returns. By the medieval period, the problem had become physical, visible, and unavoidable. In London and Paris, in Cairo and Kyoto, the streets themselves became toilets. Cesspits filled the alleys, chamber pots were emptied from upper windows with a warning cry of "Gardez l'eau." Watch out for the water, though it was rarely water. The smell must have been unimaginable, a constant, low-grade miasma rising from the cobblestones. But here we must be careful with history. It is tempting to say that bad sanitation caused the Black Death, that the plague was punishment for filthy streets. The truth is more complex. The Black Death came from fleas on rats, not from human waste alone. But the collapse of sanitation systems created the perfect environment for other killers to breed. Typhoid fever, dysentery, cholera, when it finally arrived in the 19th century, would exploit these same channels of filth. Without the Roman infrastructure, without the Indus Valley brick sewers, medieval cities were essentially incubators. The waste accumulated, the water poisoned, and the people died in waves that seemed like divine wrath, but were really engineering failures. But someone had to touch it. Someone always has to touch it. In every civilization, there existed a class of people society tried not to see, the ones who descended into the darkness so that others could live in the light. In medieval England, they were called gong farmers. In Edo period Japan, they were the Eta, the untouchables. In Victorian London, they were the night soil men. These workers crept through cities in the hours before dawn, carrying wooden buckets into the pits beneath privies, scooping the accumulated filth of hundreds of strangers, hauling it through the sleeping streets to be sold as fertilizer or dumped into the rivers. They worked naked, or nearly so, because no clothes could ever be cleaned. They died young, often of the diseases they carried. They were paid well, sometimes, but they were pariahs, forbidden from entering taverns, from marrying above their station, from being buried in consecrated ground. The contradiction was absolute. The city could not survive without them, yet the city refused to acknowledge they existed. They were the hidden harvest of civilization, reaping what we flushed away, and their story is the human heart of this history. Because before the machine, there was the man with the bucket. Before the pipe, there was the back that bent. Before the privacy we take for granted, there was the public shame of those who made privacy possible. Then, in the 16th century, a godson of Queen Elizabeth named Sir John Harrington designed something he called the Ajax, a water closet with a valve that, when opened, would release a torrent from an upstairs cistern to wash the bowl clean. He installed one for his godmother. She used it. History records that she found it amusing. And then, for 200 years, almost nothing happened. The device existed, but the revolution did not. Because here is the revelation that transforms everything. The toilet was not the real invention. The flush itself was merely a valve, a piece of brass and porcelain. The real invention was the system underneath it. Without sewers, without water mains, without treatment plants, without an entire civilization-scale infrastructure of pipes and tunnels and pumps and chemistry, a flush toilet is just a chair that fills with water. It took the Victorian crisis to prove this. In the summer of 1858, the Thames turned into a sewer. The great stink rolled through London, a stench so profound, so suffocating, that the curtains of the Houses of Parliament were soaked in chloride of lime to keep the lawmakers from vomiting. Joseph Bazalgette, a chief engineer with the Metropolitan Board of Works, proposed a solution: 82 miles of brick interceptor sewers, pumping stations with steam engines, and embankments that would push the waste downstream, away from the city. It was the largest civil engineering project in history. And when it was done, when the water flowed through those Victorian cathedrals of brick and mortar, the modern city became possible. The flush toilet could finally work because the machine had met the infrastructure, and together they created something new, the possibility of forgetting. But why did we want to forget? Why did civilization eventually decide that this universal act, shared by every human on earth, should become one of the most private moments of daily life? In the Roman latrina, you sat with your neighbors. In medieval times, you used a communal privy or a chamber pot in a shared room. But by the late 19th century, the bathroom had become a solitary cell. The psychology shifted, privacy became dignity. The Industrial Revolution had created the concept of the individual, private property, private space, private thoughts. The bathroom became the last truly private room in the house, the one place where you could lock a door and exist without observation. Shame evolved. Not shame about the body, but shame about the social exposure of the body. The toilet moved from the public square to the interior, from stone benches to porcelain thrones behind locked doors. We do not know exactly when the embarrassment began, but we know when the architecture changed. The water closet became the WC, then the bathroom, then the restroom, a word that itself reveals the psychology, a place to rest, to be alone, to hide from the world for 5 minutes of solitude. We had solved the engineering problem, and in doing so, we had created a psychological need for separation from our own biology. Today, the toilet is a miracle we barely notice. It has saved more lives than antibiotics, more than surgery, more than almost any medical breakthrough in history. Modern sanitation has added decades to human life expectancy. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery. These killers have been pushed to the margins of the developed world by the simple physics of separating drinking water from waste. And yet, here is the paradox that should haunt us. In a world where we can build skyscrapers that touch the clouds, where we can send probes beyond Pluto, where we can sequence the genome in hours, approximately 2 billion people still lack access to safe sanitation. In the slums of Lagos, in the refugee camps of Bangladesh, in the rural villages of India, human waste flows into the same streams where children play. Open defecation remains a reality for nearly 500 million people. The engineering is not the problem. We know how to build the pipes. We know how to treat the water. The problem is the infrastructure of justice, the distribution of resources, the willingness of the wealthy to pay for the health of the poor. We have the technology of ancient Rome, the engineering of Victorian London, and the chemistry of the 21st century, but we have not yet built the civilization that extends these privileges to everyone. And now we face a final twist. The modern toilet solved the crisis of the 19th century, but it created the engineering challenges of the 21st. Every time you push that handle, you use water, sometimes as much as 7 gallons in older models, though modern efficient toilets use less. Multiply that by billions of people, several times a day, and you have an ocean of clean water being turned into sewage. Then there is the waste itself, flowing through aging pipes beneath our cities, pipes that crack and leak and spill into groundwater. And what we flush has changed. Microplastics from synthetic clothing, pharmaceuticals that pass through our bodies unchanged, antibiotics, hormones, antidepressants, flowing into rivers, changing the biology of fish, creating resistance in bacteria. We solved the problem of cholera, but we may be creating problems we do not yet fully understand. The toilet is no longer just about taking waste away. It is about what happens when it gets there, and whether the planet can absorb the hidden harvest of our comfort. You will use one today, probably within the hour. You will walk into a small room, close a door, and perform an act that connects you to every human who has ever lived. Yet you will do it in absolute privacy, with water drawn from reservoirs miles away, waste carried through tunnels beneath your feet, processed in facilities you will never see, by workers you will never meet. It will take 5 minutes. You will not think about the Indus Valley bricklayers who first understood drainage, or the Roman slaves who maintained the sewers, or the Victorian engineers who crawled through the Great Stink, or the night soil men who died young so that cities could breathe. You will not think about the 2 billion people who still wait for this privilege, or the rivers that struggle to absorb our chemical burden. You will simply flush and walk away and return to your life. But that is the secret of civilization. It is not only the monuments we build, the wars we fight, or the inventions we celebrate. It is the invisible systems, the hidden harvest, the channels beneath the streets that carry away our shame, our biology, our mortality, allowing millions of us to live together without drowning in the evidence of our own existence. The greatest inventions are the ones that disappear, that become so ordinary we forget they were ever invented at all. So the next time you hear that rush of water, remember, you are not just using a toilet. You are standing at the end of a 200,000-year journey, and the water is still flowing.